So this is the Eiffel Tower, and I'm in here today with Lindsey Tramuta. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I love your last name.
Oh, yeah. Rhymes with Bermuda.
Rhymes with Bermuda. But where's that come from, that name?
It's Italian.
Italian?
Yeah, I'm half Italian, and the other part is Russian and Austrian.
Russian? I could have guessed that when you walked in here, actually. I was thinking...
Why?
I was just thinking, you had a Russian, Austrian, Italian, American kind of vibe.
Oh, it was so obvious, right?
You're right.
Eiffel Tower with Oliver G.
So we're in here today with Lindsey, and we're going to be talking about coffee, her blog, her new book, all that's coming up. And we're going to be doing it over a cappuccino that we've just got from Lomi Coffee Shop. Have you been there before?
Absolutely. They're a big part of the book as well.
Tell me more.
Well, they're certainly one of the pioneers of a focus on terroir in the sense of coffee production, coffee roasting. They're a leader in the Paris scene.
So these guys they're giving beans to, I think their roastery gives beans to about 60 coffee shops in the city.
Yeah, I mean they also supply some restaurants. But what's really interesting is sort of they're now one of several leaders in terms of not just roasting, but even the coffee shop space. And what I think is interesting is how they've set up in a neighborhood that was, devoid of any sort of destination.
And that's
in
this
food.
neighborhood.
That's
we're in the 18th.
La Goutte d'Or. Yeah, exactly. And they've done a lot for the neighborhood, certainly. And the city was really accommodating when they were looking for a space. They said, okay, if you're going to set up your roastery, you need to have a coffee shop element to bring in community. And so that's effectively what they've done. And they've got a great team. They're
a lot of Australians in there. There's a lot of Australian accent.
Yeah, there's a lot of Australians, but, there's French blood involved, and I think that's really important that the cultures are mixing and the influence from Australia is really now, it's helping, and certainly that helped, kickstart some things, but certainly there are a lot of French people who are now really involved in this movement, and Lomi is certainly one of the groups driving that forward, and so it's really good that they've set up in this neighborhood and they're bringing people over.
If you're listening and thinking, this woman sounds like she knows Paris, I can tell you now, this woman does know Paris. You might know her behind the hit blog, Lost in Cheeseland. You might know her from Instagram, Lost in Cheeseland.
Also.
Without the I, right?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Where you've got a strong following of people who, I assume, do you know who the followers are? These are people that like Paris?
Yeah, I'd say it's a mix of people. Primarily they're in the US, London, and even in France. So I would imagine that it's a mix of French and expats. But it's people who are either fascinated by Paris and sort of the everyday life, those who want to desperately live here or have some sort of an experience here, and then those who do live here and I think, look to certain people, certain accounts for an idea of what's happening. And so for me, it's an extension of the website, certainly, and as a journalist, it helps me also offer little tidbits that either won't make some of my stories or, is just little teasing.
And I think that's one of the things with Paris and France, but especially Paris. A lot of people, maybe who've never even been here, often they just want to know more about this city.
They do, and I think certainly that helps to explain why books and stories about Paris always do so well across the world. There's sort of a long history and love affair with the city, but I think some people don't really go beyond this postcard image, and that's what certainly that's what I was trying to do with the book, is take a deep dive into what's actually making this city special today, and there are a lot of things that are contributing to that.
And we're going to talk about the book in a minute, but we've had a previous guest on here who's written a book, Lisa Anselmo, who said the secret is you put the word Paris in a book and it will sell.
Certainly a lot of publishers think that.
Yeah.
And
look, your book does have the word Paris.
It does. That was the
new Paris.
Right. That was no coincidence. Certainly, I think it draws the eye. I think people have a very specific image. Everyone has their imagination runs wild when they think about Paris, and so certainly the word has enough weight and enough power that a cover that doesn't even perhaps have a scene from the city. That word is enough to sort of provoke feelings.
It gets people going.
It gets people going. It gets people thinking about what maybe their lives could have been had they done this big, European move.
Which is what you've done.
Yeah, it started with this. For me, the seed initially was school, and I was a French literature major, and never knew what that could really offer me in life, because I knew I never wanted to teach, and I didn't want to, so I sort of continued with it kind of blindly, thinking like, well, hopefully this will work out. And certainly when you land in France, being able to carry conversation and engage with the French on their level makes a world of difference. And you can do anything, really. It's just so it's interesting for me to look back on the choices I made academically and think, oh, I never would have imagined actually that I could do something that's not actually linked to the language itself, but just allow me to live there.
It opens doors being able to speak.
Oh, completely.
How good is your French?
C'est pas mal quand même.
Oh, wow, okay. Quand même. When someone says quand même, you know that quand même is one of those things. There are a few French phrases that I know that I've got one that I'm trying to work on. It's a totally normal French word. It's just, voilà.
Voilà,
right?
ouais.
So I think everyone knows it in English. You think of a magician says it, right? But in France, they kind of say it to mean, that's right, sometimes, right?
Totally.
Right. And I still haven't used it yet. And that's one of the, my French is all right, but I know that when I use that.
Once you get some of those words in, you know you've made it.
Yeah.
And
du coup, that's another one. Du coup.
Wait, du coup, and adding those filler words, I mean, that's
well,
like...
you bring up something interesting because I've cracked how to sound more French.
How's that?
Yeah, I've cracked it. I call it the monk chant. So, like a Benedictine monk or whatever. And they do these, that kind of noise, right? So when I'm speaking French and whenever there's a pause, you put in the monk chant, okay? So for example, if you want to say, maybe normally I'd say, je m'appelle Oliver, je suis Australien. But if you have to think about it, so you say, je m'appelle Oliver, et je suis like that.
You've just changed my impression of the French and
it's the French. It's the monk chant. It's the monk chant. So anytime you pause, you do the sound.
I'm going to be thinking of that now every single time someone does it.
Try and employ it. Employ it.
But Paul Taylor, the comedian,
who's coming onto this show very soon. Continue.
Awesome. I really resonated with one of his episodes where he's talking about like his struggle is actually that he sounds French but then makes mistakes, and so people will be like, "Oh, you're a dumb French guy then," and not saying
right. I saw that one. Yeah.
And it's true that there are times when I'm like on a roll, and then I will screw up something super simple, and people will be like,
yeah.
You're either really not that smart or, you're foreign and now we have to figure out where you're from.
Yeah, it's impossible to get. You're never going to get there.
No,
foreigners
and it's fine.
very rarely get there.
It's okay. Whatever. Like, I think for a long time I wanted to be 100%. I wanted to be considered French. I'm married to a French guy. I have lived here for 10 years. I have nationality now. I think I'm okay. I think I can now assume both roles. I will forever have a very American side, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like actually when I go to the States is where I feel more like an outsider. Here, it's like, okay, there's a level of, I'll never really cross a certain threshold of being 100% française. But
that means 100% French.
But in the States, that's where I feel sort of off now.
Right. Have you found yourself making mistakes in English now?
Oh, I do. Actually, there are some funny ones because years ago, my dad picked me up from the airport, so fresh off the plane, and I must have been telling him some story, and I was like, so I really wanted to profit from the good weather, and he's like, Lindsey, we don't really use that word in that way here, and I'm like, yeah.
Because that's how,
right.
For those who maybe are still learning French, profite bien is like, enjoy
yourself, make the most of something, and certainly we really only use it in the sort of financial sense in English, but there are tons of other examples, but like that's the one that stands out in my mind because my dad thought it was hysterical. Like, you really do sound sort of different now.
I've found that with different languages, sometimes you start taking on the flow of the language. So I don't know if that's something that you've noticed with French, but I lived in Sweden for a fair while, and when I talked to my family, they said, "Oh, you talk in a different way when you speak English now.
For sure,
like you speak slower or more up and down."
Sometimes it's more like staccato as well.
Right.
And I don't always notice it until I hear myself. I was on this French TV show, and I heard myself speaking, and then I compared how I maybe would have said the same thing in English, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's really
interesting.
It's really different." But I think that kind of makes, you can't help these things. At a certain point, you sort of are just entrenched, and your brain does all sorts of wonky things when you're going between languages, and I think it's kind of fun.
Every newspaper I see says that if you speak more than one language, you're going to live forever. Yeah,
forever.
right?
You're not going to have Alzheimer's. Yeah. You're going to be sort of above the pack. You're going to last forever.
If you're just joining us, this is the Earful Tower, and we're speaking with Lindsey Tramuta, rhymes with Bermuda. She runs Lost in Cheeseland blog. She's got a new book coming out, which we're about to talk about. But first, I want to know the secret of how to get an Instagram following.
Oh, geez.
Because I looked before the show, you have 60,000 plus. Mm-hmm. You've already been on Instagram since you've been in the studio, and that's only 10 minutes.
I mean, I had to do a little teasing that I was going on the show with you.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. But before, I looked at my own Instagram following, and I thought I had a healthy couple of hundred. And then I actually did the maths. I have 0.67% as many followers as you do. Of course, it's not all about followers.
No.
But you've got a brand and a book that you're selling. But how did you turn Paris? Give us the secrets of how to do a good Instagram post about Paris.
Okay, well, I think there are two schools of thought. Certainly people who go the very oh, wow. I just sounded like my parents from Buffalo, New York there for a second. Postcard Paris.
Okay.
Let's show the peonies and let's show the Eiffel Tower and all of these very cliche things which generate engagement because...
Hang on, is this what you should or shouldn't do?
I'm just saying this is one approach.
Because I'm taking notes.
Yeah, do. You're going to just have a feed full of Eiffel Tower soon. And certainly those are major images that resonate with people around the world. And then there's the other side, which is, well, you can do that and that can be part of what you do, but what else is there? Paris is so much more than that. And I've always sort of operated with the strategy is a big word. I just mean, with the goal of trying to reveal what the city is really like for someone living here. And certainly for people who travel frequently, who love food or who love very specific things.
But the positive side, because I haven't seen you Instagramming a picture of dog poo on your shoes.
No.
And that's the real Paris.
I will say, if you were to spend a lot of time going back years when I first started on Instagram, I did show things like, I remember one day on my way to work, I had seen someone who just dumped all of their Nespresso capsules on the street.
Right.
Or perhaps it's actually like a bag that exploded, whatever. Right. But the garbage was just all over the street. And it was left there for who knows how long. And I did take a photo of that, and I was just like, people have this image of Paris as being, clean, which I also don't know where that comes from because I never thought it was a clean, super clean city.
That's probably the mayor Anne Hidalgo's work coming to fruition, trying to...
But that's now.
Right.
I mean, initially, no one was really, pushing all that stuff. But so long ago, I did show some of those less glamorous things.
Right. But you wouldn't...
But certainly, that's what other areas are for. That's what I use Twitter for. If I really want to, talk about what's, less glamorous. From a visual point of view, though, people don't really want to see that stuff.
For Twitter followers, you can give them your handle. Is it the same?
Yes, it's Lost in Cheeseland. That screws everybody up. If I could go back, I probably wouldn't do it that way.
You can change your Instagram name, can't you?
I know, but you know what? Then people've got to relearn.
Yeah.
But no, so I think it's about being true to what you're really after. If you're someone who just loves the beautiful stuff and want to focus on that, great, follow that. I don't want to focus on just one thing, and certainly I try to give a sense of what's really happening here. Right.
So I've written 1, Eiffel Tower, 2, no dog poo. That's what I've got.
Eiffel Tower sparingly, maybe.
What about taking pictures of things like coffee and that kind of stuff?
I'm sure. I mean, certainly, if you do a search for any of the coffee-related hashtags around the world, you get the sense that this is a popular topic for a lot of people, and it's certainly a topic of interest. But at this point, it's sort of so commonplace. It's not going to stand out very much unless you're saying something. And this is the other thing. It's like, well, how can you add value? If you're going to post a coffee photo, maybe you're saying like, this is amazing, this coffee shop won an award, or they're doing great work.
Tell a story. Take them on a journey.
Tell a story, and that's what I try to do.
You don't want to be a chocolat show-off.
I love that.
Thanks.
Can I use that?
Yeah, well, we had a franglais episode a few back where we invented words.
Chocolat show-off.
Chocolat show-off was one of the winning words. So
I'm really impressed. But you need to start having a running list of all of these.
We need to have a running list. I'll put that on my list of
to-dos.
Instagram. And I've got a question from a listener in Fiji.
Oh.
Who may or may not be my dad.
Oh.
who says...
Your dad lives in Fiji?
Yeah, he lives in Suva, the capital.
How does one move
That's
there?
a whole different story. You'll have to tune into the Eiffel Tower Fiji version for that, which
Okay, I'll
doesn't
be there.
exist yet. But he says... I told him that you were coming on. He said... ask her why London, when you put the hashtag London in, you get 60 million hits. Paris, 55 million hits. And Suva, you get 0.27 million hits. In
Interesting.
What's he doing wrong?
Well, first of all, I'm actually quite surprised that London has more hits than Paris.
Okay, that could be his stats that are off.
You might want to double check your
Yeah.
source. I don't know. I mean, there's a large set of the population in the world population that probably just wants to see sunny, beautiful, beachy, tropical.
That's what he needs to do.
Photos.
He's always putting up pictures of fish. If you're listening, Dad, get your stuff together.
Fish, yeah. I mean, that's really a niche market, I think.
Yeah.
Of people who just want to see fish photos.
Anyhow, let's talk about your book now. I've been putting it off. It's The New Paris. This is exciting. This is a new book coming out April 18th.
That's
am I right?
right, worldwide.
Let's talk about this book. What can people expect?
So it's not a guidebook.
Not a guidebook.
Right. What I tried to do was look at what has made the city so special. When I've been here for 10 years, and certainly initially, I got the sense that this wasn't a city that changed very, very much, or was very comfortable with change.
And
that did start to evolve. And about 6-7 years ago, certain things started taking shape, whether that was changes in food and dining, which did precede my arrival in France, but very slowly.
that was what, 7 years ago?
10 years
10 years
ago.
ago.
10
sorry.
years ago, yeah. And then you start seeing the arrival of different influences from further afield, which I think relates to a broader social discussion. So in the book, I look at a number of different themes that contribute or are part of what's evolving the city. So I look at that through the lens of dining, through pastry, and how that craft itself has evolved over the years, because that's actually one area that isn't as obvious to people. Specialty coffee.
Hang on, how has pastry changed?
Well, I'm not going to give all
I'm
the
gonna have to
secrets
buy
away.
the book.
But certainly the society's tastes have changed, and so pastry chefs and chocolate makers have had to adapt to that. Looking at specialty coffee, as we were discussing, alcohol, craft beer, natural wine, all of these things that are now very much part of the food and beverage landscape, and then moving beyond food and wine and all those delicious things into the return of craftsmanship. And now we're a city that has the same, big luxury brands and high street brands as Tokyo and LA and London. And so how do you find really interesting creative goods when you're coming to France as a visitor? And then also the city, how it's evolved in terms of places and spaces. So the city's, very strong in urban development. And so looking at the ways that the city has worked to allow Parisians to reconnect with the city in new ways. So I feel like there's a dynamic energy here that I didn't feel necessarily when I arrived. And it's something that has really taken shape and has accelerated in recent years. And so my goal was to look at sort of all of these factors, and also with the help of Parisians. So there are Parisian profiles in the book. There's also all
Not
this
like
commentary.
novel. This is like
No,
a
it's-
sort of
it's
magazine format turned into a book.
a little
would you
bit,
say?
yeah. I mean, certainly there are addresses at the very end, which is the one guide component. But really, there's over 150 photos in the book.
Did you take them?
No, so I worked with a New York photographer named Teresa Fay, who's fantastic. And what I loved about working with her actually is that she's like my perfect audience, because she's been to Paris 8-9 times. She has gotten sort of halfway into this deeper, more local experience when she comes. But still, when we were going around and shooting, she would ask me like, so why is this place so important? Why are we doing this versus something else? And it was fascinating, because it meant that what I was, explaining in the book was going to answer her questions. And that's what I want. This isn't necessarily geared toward the first time visitor to Paris. They should absolutely hit the landmarks and the museums, but this is for people who want a deeper
And it's sort of, you're
appreciation.
talking about how the city's changing, because a lot of people maybe would say that Paris has rested on its laurels, attracting visitors based on...
Untrue. I
No?
mean, there are areas in which the city still has more work to do, but I think people expect, especially Americans, expect other countries and people to move as fast as they do. But in fact, I think they've been operating under a pace that is appropriate for them. Paris specifically. Like, I can't speak to other areas in France, which certainly move maybe a little bit slower. But, you know, I think Paris has been seen as progressive and modern at many points in its history, and this is sort of another upward swing in that trajectory. And that's what I wanted to try to document, because what's happening now today, what's going to open 6 months from now, is, for me, an extension of this movement that's already begun.
What are you most excited about in terms of changing in Paris?
I just think a more openness to, especially in the world of food, more foreign influences. You know,
a lot of people complain, even in just the supermarkets, they say there's not enough foreign influences in the supermarket, that you can't go and get.
Well, certainly, I mean, the supermarket is not the best place to get a variety of things. I would say go actually to the small gourmet grocers and épiceries that have more of a fine-tuned curation of products. There are shops that are like just Middle Eastern spices.
So when you say then that the foreign influences are coming in, you're talking about these new restaurants and these new cafes and stuff. And I mean, what you say you're looking forward to it. Is there anything that you have that you already know that's coming along?
So I do know, I don't know the final name, but I know that the Experimental Cocktail Group is launching in a couple months from now an Israeli-inspired restaurant, which I'm excited about, because they've got a chef who has done a lot of work in Tel Aviv at some of the big restaurants. I'm blocking out on the name. I can see it in my head, and I can't. The words are not going to come out, but in any case, that's something I've just learned about that's really exciting. You know, so I think there was more and more foreign chefs also who are coming over and seeing, okay, now's a good opportunity. I can expose this kind of stuff to the Parisian market. They're ready for it.
What would you give as tips to people listening who want to find a good restaurant, good coffee shop? We're going to put you on the spot and get some secrets out of you.
That's all right. I mean, certainly for a lot of people, Instagram has been sort of almost a replacement to guidebooks and searching on Google. You know what?
I saw on Instagram the other morning. I was in bed and Sunday morning, and a local coffee shop to me was Fondation had put a picture of croissants and fresh croissants, ham and cheese right there. And I commented and I said on Instagram, I said, "Have you got any of those left?" And they responded, "We sure do. We're stocked up." And I said, "Save 2 of them, and I'll be right there."
That is just.
They said they responded. I went in. They were there. They said, "Hey, you're the Instagram guy," as in not the guy that messaged us on Instagram. And they had them there ready for me. And I was like, that kind of advertising didn't exist.
No,
and they literally got me right at home.
You actually bring up a really good point, which is that businesses today, whether it's a new restaurant or a new shop, the first thing they do is create an Instagram account. And many of them are teasing their opening. So you'll see them, working on the construction for their retail space, or you'll see we're doing our, ingredient sourcing. And I think that has become an invaluable tool. And certainly that's how a lot of journalists are learning about new openings. That's how a lot of people who are very interested in certain developments in the city are able to keep track. And so Instagram, I think, to your question about how visitors can figure out, how to get to the good places, I think certainly there are enough in-the-know Instagrammers in the city who are great resources. And I think, I try to be a resource and answer people. It's not just about pushing content, but also if you have questions, ask me. I will guide you, I want people to have a good experience here. Of all things, there's nothing that frustrates me more than when people, message me, or a few years ago would email me after an article on my blog or something and be like, oh, I had a really sort of bad food experience when I was there. And I'm like, where did you go? What did you eat?
Yeah, right.
How did you get your information?
Right.
And I think luckily Instagram, for the most part, I mean, sure, there are restaurants and brands that are paying people also to promote their establishments, which creates also a little bit of a gray area, but certainly there's enough good stuff out there that and people are spending their time on Instagram, so use it as a research tool too.
Right, and this is something that's probably applicable to more than just restaurants and coffee shops.
Oh, absolutely.
Even
I saw a friend of mine was just in Japan, and she was posting about the tour guide she used, and so she tagged her tour guide. I've now I took a screenshot of her tour guide for the day that I finally make it to Japan, and I saved that. So that is something she didn't share on any other platform and that I wouldn't have necessarily known to ask.
Does the Eiffel Tower radio show need an Instagram account?
I mean, certainly I think it could be good.
Just another thing to do. Oh.
I mean...
Okay, well, that's something I'm going to look into. We'll stick with Facebook for now. Find us on Facebook, by the way, the Eiffel Tower. You know how it works. We're running low on time, so I thought what we'd do is a game that I've just come up with on the spot because I cut you off just before when I asked you for restaurant tips. And what I'm going to ask you is for 3 restaurant tips, why they're good, in rapid-fire time.
I'm a little scared.
Followed by 3 cafes.
Okay, well, at least this isn't like... 20.
Exactly.
The number is still quite manageable.
And you're referring to the previous episode where we got Corey Fry, the tour guide, to go through every single arrondissement of Paris and give us a tip. He did very well. But we're going to just go for 3. And I'm going to mix it up so you can't prepare in your head. Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm sure.
She's nervous. She's nervous. Okay, you ready? Give me a cafe.
Café au Bocanf.
And that's obviously in the
11th arrondissement.
And why?
I mean, it's great. There's the specialty coffee element. There's great food like shakshuka and an amazing grilled cheese sandwich, which, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, is also called the Lost in Cheeseland, which I feel very proud about. I feel like I've made it in life because I have a sandwich named after my site.
You got a sandwich named after your site.
Some people would rather have a fashion collection
named
after them. But
you should get them to name it at Lost in Cheeseland, and then people will tag you every time they eat it. There's some marketing
you just gave me
tips.
a super good idea. That's,
all right.
That's awesome.
Okay, now a restaurant.
Le 52 Faubourg Saint-Denis.
Great French accent.
Oh, thank you.
And that's
on Rue du Faubourg Saint-Denis. Yes, the 10th.
Yep.
That's one of Charles Compagnon's restaurants. It's what you would call a neo-brasserie. It's open all day. You can go for breakfast and a coffee. You can then come for lunch and then stay through to dinner. It's really, the value is unbeatable. Very market-driven. Prices are super fair. Great wine, great ambiance. No reservations, so just show up.
Okay, best. I'm cutting you off.
Oh, yeah,
we're against the clock here.
Yeah, do it.
We're against the clock. You can see the clock up there. Okay, there's no clock. Best place to take an Instagram picture with a view. Yeah, I went off topic.
Oh wow, you really left.
It's the game. It's the game. We always do it.
With a view. Well, I mean, some people would cite one of the rooftop bars, so Le Perchoir, or even.
Hang on. Not some people would cite. We're looking for Lindsey.
Sorry. Yeah.
Lindsey Lost in Cheeseland Tramuta.
Okay. I like the Molitor, the Hotel Molitor. I mean, yes, it's a little bit far, but in the 16th, because they've got, the winter, not so much. But in the nicer months, this unbelievable terrace rooftop cocktail bar, and you can go and take stunning photos of the whole city.
Can you see the Eiffel Tower from up there?
I don't recall, but I would think so.
Next question. Best place to see the Eiffel Tower from?
Trocadero.
That's the big open. Yep. Okay.
Right.
Another coffee shop.
10 Bells Bread.
10 Bells Bread.
So 10 Bells has their Canal Saint-Martin spot, and then they opened more of a flagship, which is also a bakery, in the 11th arrondissement near the Jacques Bonsergent. No, not Jacques Bonsergent. Not far from Bastille and
what do they just sell bread?
No. So it's actually a big space that shares the industrial complex with Publicis, who moved into this neighborhood. So they're making their own bread. They're making sandwiches and soups and lunch and pastry. But then they also have a big coffee shop area. So it's more of a canteen, and you can buy bread to go.
So it's like a +1 on 10 Bells.
Absolutely.
Should be 11 Bells.
That's
yeah.
You should give them that recommendation.
And last question is another good restaurant for a romantic date.
Oh.
And I'm talking very romantic. And yet, not too busy.
I really like Tanat. So that's also in my hood.
You've never left the 11.
It's on Avenue Parmentier, and what's beautiful about it, and I think what makes it romantic in the evening is they have a ceiling that's full of, it's a mirrored ceiling. So it gives this beautiful, the light just looks so stunning in there. And it's a small enough place where you get perked.
Very well done on the Under Fire game.
You threw me off, though.
Well, there was that's the way the quick fire round goes at the end of this show. You've been listening to the Eiffel Tower. We've had Lindsey Tramuta in, who's got a new book coming out, The New Paris. Find the book from April 18th. Find her on Instagram. Find her on Facebook. And thanks for coming in here.
Thanks, Oliver.
Eiffel Tower with Oliver G.